What do you see in the temple or the tabernacle? You see the Holy of Holies, the place where God dwells. That represents God's throne, God's heaven, God's place. Kind of like Eden. God was there. Now, this is going to be a heads up. This is going to be deep. It's going to be of a cosmic level. It has to do with you. I want you to focus. You don't have to get everything. It's going to be recorded, but whatever you get, you'll be able to use. And it's about you in the end. Genesis 2, then the Lord, verse 7, God formed the man of dust from the ground. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. The Lord planted a garden toward the east in Eden, and there placed the man whom he had formed. Verse 15, then the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to cultivate it and tend it. Okay, first question. What is a gardener? A gardener is one who tills the ground, plows the ground, sows the seed, plants it, nurtures it, waters it, brings it to fruition. Now, is it important? Very. Think about it. Gardening is the first thing that man ever did. The very first job was gardening. The very first occupation in the world, gardening. Man was called to be a gardener. Woman was called to help man in being a gardener, is a woman gardener as well. Man's purpose was to bring life. But when man fell, he lost the garden. And he lost his purpose, his status to be a gardener, to bring life. Paradise lost. The garden lost. The word paradise in the original ancient word is pardes, which means garden of trees, just like the Garden of Eden. That's what paradise means. We are all, think about it, we are all children descended from a gardener who lost his garden. And we're all born outside the garden. We're from him. So we're like gardeners without a garden. We're meant to produce life, but we are away from the purposes of life. That's how we're born before we're born again. There's a world of sorrows, a world of brokenness. Can't bear the life it was called to do. It bears thorns instead of producing the fruits God called. So a garden, most significant. Life began in a garden. Man began in a garden. Man began as the gardener. So everything else comes from that. Even sin came from the garden, from the fruit of the tree of the garden. But also the promise of life comes from the garden as well. Everything came from the garden. But why? Now this is going to be cosmic on this. Now I want you to focus. Think about it. Man was created in the image of God. Man was created in God's image, right? Yet. Man was made to be a gardener. So man is created as a gardener, but man is in the image of God. What does that mean? Think about it. If he was a gardener and he's the image of God, it means God is a gardener. That's why man was a gardener. Because God is the ultimate gardener. He's the cosmic gardener. That's why he made man as a gardener. So how is God a gardener? A gardener is one who sows life. God is the one who sows life. The gardener is the one who begins life, plants life. God is the one who plants life, begins life. God is the sower. He begins everything. A gardener arranges the garden. So God is the one who arranges life. He sustains it. He nurtures life. God is the gardener. So what's the garden of God? His garden is the whole world, is the universe. It's God, and then there's the world. And so God, it's like man in Eden, man in the garden is a picture of God sowing to the world. But the plot thickens because there's another one involved, and that is the woman is born of him, born of his bone, flesh of his flesh. And so therefore, think about it. So if God made man, and man also means man and woman here, if God made man in his image and man is there as woman, man, helpmate with a helpmate, does God have a helpmate? Yes. It's us. It's humanity. It's made to be. It's saved humanity. But we were made to help God. God is, what does it mean? Man and woman. God is a husband. Right? And the creation was meant to be his bride. Israel is called his bride, and the church is his bride. But we were born to be his bride. So you have God, you have a man and a woman in a garden. We were meant to be the bride of God, the helpmate of God, the helpmate of a gardener. We were meant to. And that means we were meant to join with his purposes, to be part of bringing life with his work of bringing life. We're to be part of it. We're his helpmate. Man is created in the image of God. The woman was created in the image of man and the image of God. So what a beautifully cool picture. Man and woman is a picture of God dwelling and bringing life. So we are the image of God together. But then came the fall. Now that also speaks of something cosmic. So in the fall, what happened? Man, or man and woman, had to leave the garden. So what happened? What happened? If he left the garden, what happens? Man, it means the gardener, Adam, is separated from the garden. But Adam and Eve are pictures of God, are an image of God. So what does that mean? It means God is now separated from his garden. Is that God is the creation, the world and God are separated. Because that's what sin does. So even their leaving the garden is a picture that God and the world are separated. So what happens when a garden is separated from the gardener? What happens to the garden? It starts getting all messed up, starts falling apart, starts getting weeds, starts getting thorns, starts withering away, animals come in. Thorns get in the garden. Well, what did God say? He said thorns are going to now be in the world. The garden can't produce its life. What happened to the creation? It started falling apart. When this separation came, it started falling apart. And thorns got in. And pain got in, and sorrow got in, and sin, because sin got in, and guilt got in, and conflict got in, and blood got in, everything got in. And what was the sign of the separation that day? God says, it says, God stationed cherubim at the garden to guard the way to the tree of life with a flaming sword turning in every direction. The cherubim, the sign of the separation on that day was the cherubim. So what is that? That means that the cherubim are the sign of the separation between us and God, us and the garden, and the separation of God and his garden, the world. It's a barrier, a barrier. Now fast forward to the tabernacle, which becomes the temple. What do you see? It was the tent of meeting where God and man are to meet together. What do you see in the temple or the tabernacle? You see the Holy of Holies, the place where God dwells. That represents God's throne, God's heaven, God's place, kind of like Eden. God was there. And interesting, because in the temple of Jerusalem, there were objects, some of those holy objects, it says, make them as buds, blossoms, like something that grows in the garden. And it even says there are images of trees, palm trees in the temple, as in a garden. But then, so there's God, it's a symbol of God, and then there's the veil that says the way is blocked. There's a barrier between us and God. It's a veil. But what is on the veil? It wasn't just a veil. It was a veil with images of the cherubim, the ones who blocked the garden. So here in the temple, you've got God, you got man, and you got the cherubim, just like you did goes back to Eden.